the one guy I think I'm starting to see enough to say, all right, he's going to be there for them in the playoffs, and he's becoming a different kind of player for them, and a difference maker is Trent Frederick. I
Oh
think he
yeah.
plays a style of game. I think the way that he's playing now, the confidence level that he's at, the way he can drive a line now, and they're
Mm.
playing him at center because he is driving lines at times, and he's making players better that he's playing with. I think you see all that stuff from him, and you're starting to see a guy that could be a factor in the playoffs, a bigger factor, even when the style of play gets to that way. Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs Podcast. I believe this is the 60th episode of the Pucks with Haggs Podcast. Thank you for following along and listening. I'm Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Join up for a premium membership to get all the NHL and Bruins stuff that I write sent straight directly to your inbox from the Substack newsletter. I also write for the Boston Sports Journal. After every Bruins game, you can find my column either that night or the next morning. I'll also have some stuff this week with the Bruins on their bye. I've got a tag team with me this week. We got third man in. This should be fun. Friend and colleague Mick Colageo, friend and colleague Mark Divver from the New England Hockey Journal. And Mick, I always like to let you give your plug. So why don't you tell everybody where they can find your stuff?
Okay, so the Rink Rap blog is my own now, and it's no longer affiliated with the Standard Times. And it's at rinkrapmc.com, and I link to it on X Twitter and on Facebook, and I pretty much do game blogs. And then I write a Sunday column for bostonhockeynow.com. And I do those occasional issues for the Hockey News on the Bruins articles and the latest one we just worked on is Future Watch, so prospects.
So, and I guess, Mark, you and Mick spent some quality time with the Mooj over the last week or two. Is that what I was hearing?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Always good to check in with the wit and wisdom of Ryan Mouchinel. Always.
That's it. All right. Quickly, I just want to thank our sponsors. Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Delicious meals ready in 2 minutes. Dietitian approved, chef made. You throw them in the micro and they're ready in 2 minutes. Great for people that are busy out there and nice, healthy options. Also, the Super Bowl is coming. I don't know if you heard this or not, but Fanduel Sportsbook is all about the Super Bowl. I can't wait to do the squares. I can't wait to, get ready for the game, get hyped up, see what Taylor Swift is doing 24/7 from now until the actual game is played. We're going to be over the top with all that stuff, and I'm sure FanDuel Sportsbook is going to have some Taylor Swift prop bets along with the player prop bets. So if you want to get into FanDuel Sportsbook with the Super Bowl, not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score touchdowns, how many points will be scored, so much more, including, I'm sure, all kinds of Taylor Swift stuff. So new customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So that's $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit fanduel.com/Boston and sign up. All right. 31-9-9, guys, for the Boston Bruins at the bye week / All-Star break. Just want your thoughts on what we've seen of the Bruins to this point as a whole as we're in this break, both bye and All-Star, and the Bruins get basically 9 days off here. Your thoughts on the team to this point, Mark, in a general sense, where you think they're going, what you've thought in the first half, and where we are right now.
Well, I thought they'd be in contention for maybe the last or second to last playoff spot,
Yep.
Like others said the same thing, but here we are. It's been amazing. It started out with goaltending carrying them, and since then we've had continued good goaltending, but guys like Charlie Coyle and stepping up. Pavel Zak has been good. It's a surprise, a pleasant surprise. Is it a team that's built for a long playoff run? Well, I'm not so sure as currently constituted that's the case, but we got a ways to go till the trade deadline and the end of the season, so we'll see what happens if there are any moves in store.
Yeah, and part of the mitigating factor with all that, and it puts the Bruins in an interesting position, and we've talked about this a little bit, is do I think that this team as constituted is ready for a 2-month gauntlet in the playoffs? No, I don't. But I also look at the Eastern Conference and say it's pretty wide open. There is not a clear-cut favorite, and is it going to be a juggernaut in the East that makes it all the way to the end? I don't know. I mean, I still think it's going to have to go through Florida when it's all said and done, based on last year, based on their personnel, based on all that stuff. But are they going to be as good as they were last year in the postseason? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch all of that. But I wonder how that, or if that tempers, or if that changes the Bruins' approach at the trade deadline and tempts them to do something bigger than maybe they would have anticipated doing, or at least makes them think about it more. I still don't know that they have the pieces to do that and all that stuff. But like I'm pretty similar in the boat with you, where I'm very surprised where they are. I thought they'd be a wild card team. The fact that they are where they are, and also the fact that in the Atlantic Division, like the teams that I thought might make a move this year and really push have not done so. I mean, Detroit is within shouting distance of a playoff spot, but Buffalo hasn't done anything. Ottawa hasn't done anything. Montreal obviously is in a similar spot to where they were last year. None of those teams have made a substantial move up, as far as I'm concerned. So it might be the same old in the Atlantic Division when it gets to playoff time. Mick, your thoughts on everything you've seen with the Bruins to this point, where they sit here at the bye week and the All-Star break?
I'm amazed and pleased at the way this team has adjusted from being an ultra puck possession team to being able to play the harder hockey that sort of toppled them over last year. I feel like they got a better answer this year, a more blue collar approach to the game. It's not as pretty. It's more gritty and grindy and along the sideboards up the ice. The D are very activated. I wasn't really sure how that would work out when you consider that you don't have the run support to play so actively with your Ds. But that has sustained, and it's helped them. Is that a regular season formula that can translate to the playoffs? I think that they need more if they want to make that work in the playoffs. But Coyle's better in his position than I realized he would be, and I love Charlie Coyle. So, I mean, he's been amazing. The puck possession, the way he hangs on. Zacha, not as good as I thought he would be in his position, and they actually moved him off the dot at one point in the season. Other guys have really contributed, and I'm really glad that they've allowed Geeky and Freddie to influence the way they play as a team. And I think that's really helped them. This log jam on defense is getting a little interesting. And, but you're right. The goalies, without the goalies, none of this happens. So it's been another stellar season, validating what happened last year, but this time in reverse, where we have a really good goalie and a great goalie.
You know what's interesting though is when they were 14-1-3 in the second month of the season, they got off that great start, and I think they even admitted they probably weren't playing as well as their record indicated. They had managed to pile up points and wins, but they weren't a 14-1-3 team. I felt like at that point they were way more reliant on Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman to be brilliant every single night and to really carry them. And I still think the goaltending is a strength of this team, no doubt about it. Probably the biggest strength. But 12-2-3 since the holiday break, since they got back from Christmas, they've been lights out. And it hasn't been just the goaltending.
No, you're right. They're actually outshooting teams, outchancing them.
They're getting better. Like they're a better team, and they've consistently been a better team now for a month than they were pre-Christmas. 11 goals apiece for Pasternak and Marchand in 14 games in the month of January. Charlie Coyle has been a point-per-game player in the month of January. 10 assists and a plus 14 in 14 games for Hampus Lindholm. Even though he had that one game,
he's been way better.
where he had the bad pinch and it cost them in the third period, and Monty was on him about it afterwards. He has been, I think, the most improved player in this past month from where he was in the first 3 months of the season.
That's
McAvoy
fair.
at plus 17 in January.
Yeah.
He's been playing at an excellent level too. 5 goals apiece from Frederick and Heinen this month, so and 6 from DeBrus. So you're getting the secondary scoring. That has elevated them to like averaging over 4 goals a game for like about a month, over a month now.
Yeah.
And they seem to be getting contributions from everybody. Mark, is this, you think, what we've seen in January, the Bruins team we're going to see for the rest of the year? Is this them playing at their best, or is this kind of sustainable, what we're seeing right now?
That's a good question. At some point, will they start resting guys? They didn't do that last year, and
Yep.
they probably should have, right?
Yep.
But I don't know. Guys like Danton Heinen, Matt Grzelcyk, can you count on them in the postseason to play the kind of hard hit, just
Yeah.
war? It's a war zone in the playoffs, right? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
Is Danton Heinen built for that? I say his record shows no. Can he transform into, build on the good season that he's having and be that in the playoffs? I'm not sure of that at all. Will Matt Grzelcyk get hurt? There'll be an injury. Someone will get hurt, right?
Here's my Vegas email on that one.
Well, and DeBrusque too. Is DeBrusque going to be there for you in the playoffs? Even though he's had some good postseasons before, can you count on him when the going gets really tough?
He'll really go back to being a perimeter player. Yeah.
Though I will say, though, the one guy I think I'm starting to see enough to say, all right, he's going to be there for them in the playoffs, and he's becoming a different kind of player for them, and a difference maker, is Trent Frederick. I think he plays a style of game. I think the way that he's playing now, the confidence level that he's at, the way he can drive a line now, and they're playing him at center because he is driving lines at times, and he's making players better that he's playing with. I think you see all that stuff from him, and you're starting to see a guy that could be a factor in the playoffs, a bigger factor, even when the style of play gets to that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Hopefully that's how it will play out. But he's obviously having a tremendous season and a great run lately. And you hope, he's been a guy who hasn't always been consistent.
Yep.
He's had good stretches, bad stretches. He's in the middle of a good one, and you hope it continues. But who knows?
Well, that's too, because you get into a playoff series and a team knows they're going to see Freddie for 5 or 6 or 7 games, and they're thinking, hey, let's get this guy off his game. Let's get him into fights. Let's deactivate him by distracting him. And I think that's going to be a huge part for Frederick in the postseason, is focusing on what he does well to help the team win hockey games and not get caught up.
I agree, but I also don't want him to lose the bite from his game in the playoffs either. I think the Bruins have way too many wait and see kind of players in the playoffs, rather than guys that are just going to like take it to the other team and dictate to them how things are going to
on his terms.
It's a tricky balance between those two things, but I think the Bruins need more players that have assertiveness in the playoffs instead of what the other teams are doing to them. So it's I agree with you.
If Freddie wants to blaze his own path, sure. Let him do it, but let him be it, rather than having somebody who plays a lesser role in somebody else's team, like a fourth line, 5-minute guy, trying to get him into a fight to disrupt the Bruins. And
the Ryan Lombergs of the world. I absolutely agree with that. Mick, I ask you the same question I asked Mark. Like all the numbers I reeled off from January and the way that they've played basically since they came back from Christmas, is this the Boston Bruins team that we're going to see the rest of the year? Do you think the way that they're playing right now is sustainable?
I do, provided they stay healthy, because the way they're playing right now is the most rugged game I've seen since Don Sweeney's been general manager. I mean, granted, the personnel has been very gradually tweaked toward that. There have been other failed attempts to do so, Nick Ritchie. But you have a team now that's come together and plays hard together, and the best version of Danton Heinen I've ever seen.
Yeah,
But
I
like
agree.
Mark said, and as Jim Montgomery had said earlier in the season, every 10-game segment of the regular season gets a little bit more like the playoffs. And will there be a threshold there that does affect whether Matt Grzelcyk can stay healthy if he's in hard matchups, or if he's playing with McAvoy, or is Danton Heinen gonna do what he did last year in Pittsburgh, which is I'm not sure. And Jake DeBrusk, will he stay healthy if he's playing through the middle of the game? Will he try to do Bobby Ryan hockey? So I think these are things that if I had the wheel and there were offers on the table for me to continue trending the Bruins toward rugged toughness that demanded by the playoffs, that especially knowing that all these guys are on expiring contracts, I would be assertive about that. And if the right returns were there, or an opportunity to get back in the draft, then yeah, I think I'm moving on things for that.
Yeah, I think so. I think they could be tempted by that. There's no question. All right, first half MVP in your books. I think David Pastrnak is obviously a very easy choice given the numbers he's put up, given how important he's been offensively. He's going to be in the Hart Trophy conversation at the end of the year as long as he stays healthy. He's just having another 50 to 60 goal season. And will have well over 100 points, is just off the charts offensively. Like Montgomery's playing him a ton. He's playing over 20 minutes a lot in these games, and he's being sort of like there's a lot on his shoulders. And that's a concern to Mark's point about resting players. I think some of the heavy minutes that you're seeing players play in now in the middle of the season in the dog days, if it's not adjusted, could be a problem having a full tank of gas come playoff time. But all that being said, my first half MVP is Charlie Coyle. We've mentioned him a little bit. He's on pace for his best offensive numbers. He's going to be in a Bergeron-esque range as far as production goes. He's going to have, as long as he remains consistent in the second half, 25 to 30 goals, 60-plus points. He's well and above the most faceoffs on the team. He's like over 800. He's got 250 more faceoffs than anybody else on the team. Kills penalties, plays a vital role on the power play in both situations. Has really become a number one center when they had to have somebody step up into that position with Bergeron and Krejci retiring. And he's kind of, and I wrote about this a little bit, he's kind of made, I think, the demand to have to go out to get an Elias Lindholm or some kind of number one center at the trade deadline, he's made that moot obsolete. You do not need to go out and trade for a player like that when you have a guy like Charlie Coyle in the prime of his career playing number one center to an incredibly effective degree. And he's really proven me wrong in a lot of ways, because I always thought he was kind of a third line center and that was going to be his lot in life in the NHL. And he's shown that when he can develop some chemistry with Marchand, playing with him for a while, can play a bigger role, he can do more offensively and he can dominate more consistently in the offensive zone. Mick, your first half MVP, with me giving all my bouquets of flowers to Charlie Coyle.
Yeah, I think wow, this sounds like such a cop out here, but between Swayman, McAvoy, and with McAvoy's spotty first half of the season, to me, his performance may not have been his best, but without him back there, they are so totally screwed.
Yeah.
That team just doesn't have, he's the heart and the soul of that defense. And he's what catalyzes that whole moving forward part and the aggression piece. And those aspects really depend so heavily on him that I will always consider he's my default name for the most important player on the Bruins. Take him off the team and it changes them more substantially than removal of any other one individual. Swayman's had a hell of a season. You're absolutely right on Coyle, and I feel like he embodies the meaning of the 7th Player Award. He has performed above expectations. That's the modern definition. The original one was performs and above what one would normally expect. TV 38, Eddie Westfall. But yeah, Charlie Coyle's elevated, and they needed him to, and he did it. And he wound up becoming a key component and not just a supporting plumber for those forward lines, especially for Marchand and whoever else they whatever they do, whether they do a super line with Pasta or whether they revert back to something with more balance. We didn't know how Zaka was going to do. Obviously, Patra has really should have been in the American League this year, but the rules wouldn't allow it. So Coyle's emergence, I applaud your recognition of him.
Yeah, and it was Pearson's pointers for me on Channel 38 for my generation of Channel 38. But I'm right there with you. And the one other thing I would say about Coyle too is like he's really stepped into a bigger leadership role, I think, on this team too, as far as setting an example, as far as being there, win, lose, or draw after games, as far as, making sure everybody's sort of eyes are on the prize and making sure that message of, I don't care what my numbers are and I don't care what I'm doing as long as the team is having success. And he really believes in that. And you can, and I think
Allison.
I think I think Bergeron had a major impact on him playing with him. And a guy that he kind of idolized when he was younger and playing with him and seeing him day to day. And I think there's some very Bergeron-esque qualities to Charlie Coyle now, having, rubbed off on him.
It's what he's always aspired to. And now it's great to see him really achieving that peak. And Trent Frederick similarly sees Charlie Coyle as his mentor.
Yeah. First half MVP, Mark, for you.
Well, I got to go with Coyle as well, for all the reasons you guys have just gone over. But one thing that's stunning to me, in a way, is at his age and with how deep he is into his NHL career, to be able to raise his game another level it just doesn't happen. But he's doing it, and he's just been an indispensable player for them. And I go back to watching Charlie Coyle back to the South Shore Kings days when, him and Chris Wagner were on the team, and to see what he's turned into, he's always been a good player, a really good player. But I don't know, back then, at least, I didn't look at him and say, well, he's going to be a number one center for the Boston Bruins down the road. It didn't seem, it was inconceivable. But
first legitimate successor.
Yeah. So, kudos to him. He really deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think enough stuff can be written about how important he's been to what the Bruins are doing right now. And I love his attitude too. We asked him about, is this your best NHL season? And he said, well, I could crap the bed in the second half and nobody's going to be talking about that going down the stretch, which I think is the perfect masshole response and is like absolutely like the Weymouth, Massachusetts in him, being real about the entire situation and keeping things in perspective. And I always love that about Charlie Coyle.
He's the leader without the letter.
Yes, exactly. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from Fanduel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, putting some football squares together with your friends, and placing some super bets at Fanduel Sportsbook. And I'm not even just talking about who's going to score the first touchdown, who's going to win the game, who's going to be ahead at halftime, who's going to be a special guest at the halftime show. I'm also talking about non-player prop bets. I'm talking about Taylor Swift prop bets. All the good stuff that we're going to see there that's making everybody happy. So right now, you can go to FanDuel Sportsbook, and they have so many ways for you to end the season with a W or two or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but Fanduel Sportsbook also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more, including what is Taylor Swift doing at halftime. All right, all you got to do is join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Now is a great time to get on board with the exclusive wagering partner of CLNS Network, Fanduel Sportsbook. If you haven't done it before, the app is easy to download, and you can just get going with the bets. With the NBA and the NHL are in full swing too, but like right now we know it's about the Super Bowl for the next 2 weeks with Fanduel Sportsbook. So visit fanduel.com/Boston to sign up. That's fanduel.com/Boston to start getting your bets going with Fanduel Sportsbook and make every moment more with Fanduel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Player most in need of improvement in the second half in your mind, Mark?
Jeez, that's a tough one.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys having good years.
Well, Matt Grzelcyk, he was hampered by an injury, obviously. I'd like to see him get back to his, but even since he's returned from his injury, he hasn't been the Grizz that we've known, through the years. I'd like to see him, get back to that level and, shut up a lot of people who are, I don't know that they're rooting against him, but he can't make a mistake without a lot of complaints on X that geez, this guy, what are we keeping him around for? So I'm gonna go with Grizz.
I go with Grizz too, and to be honest with you, watching him play, like I love Grizz. I've always liked him as a person. Like I've always admired that. He can play at the NHL level at the size he is, because it's extremely difficult to do and to stay in one piece and to, survive for as long as he has and thrive at times. And I go back to I remember interviewing them as prospects before they were even in the NHL. And I did an interview for NBC Sports Boston where it was Grizz, McAvoy, and Brandon Carlo when they were all still up and coming prospects. And I remember we sat Grizz right in the middle of McAvoy and Carlo. And it looked like he was a little kid with two grown adults, with these two huge defensemen, and he was in the middle, who doesn't belong in this picture kind of thing. But he's always found a way to get it done, and he's always had a great skating ability, great ability to creatively break the puck out, and ability to survive in his own end with technique and stick work and all these different things while not being the biggest guy. But watching him lately, I wonder if it's either A, a confidence thing with him right now, or B, he's just not skating as well as he did before for whatever reason. But I agree that I have not seen the normal Matt Grzelcyk this year consistently. And maybe it's not because he's in a consistent role and he's getting moved around too a little bit and he's had some injury stuff. It's hard to tell. But I just think there's been more instances this year than ever before where either I don't notice him at all in a bad way in games, or I'm noticing him because of turnovers and bad plays and things like that.
Yeah.
So, and being, just thrown around near the net in the defensive zone. So I agree. I think on a team that's 31-9-9, there aren't going to be too many things to quibble with and too many things to pick apart. And criticize. I might have said a month ago Hampus Lindholm, but he's played so well, I think, over the last month that he's
you just took those words out of my mouth. If you asked me a month ago,
yeah, if he I think he's ended that for me. Even though I need to see this for the next few months from him going down the stretch, but I would probably go with Matt Grzelcyk too with Hampus Lindholm. The first 3 months I would say him, but the last month he's been very good.
Well, we don't talk about Matt Poitras because we don't factor him anymore. If we ever did, and I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth here, but to whatever extent I may have thought there was a chance that he was going to be a factor in this formula toward the end of the season, I stopped thinking that at a certain point. And so in that regard, it's a development year for him. I'm disappointed in what's going on with John Beecher.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a point a couple months back where his game was looking mighty fine. He was really understanding how to use his rangy speed on the ice in opportunistic ways in order to make the fourth line more than a placeholder and don't lose us the game while you're out there. Guys need a breather. They were better than that, and they were making things happen and forcing penalties and stopping icings and canceling them with racing and a lot of pressure forechecking and good stuff that was going on. I don't really know how it went wrong here.
And one of the best
it
face-off
did.
guys on a team that struggled quite a bit in the face-off circle too.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Piling on for me. So that's another one for me. I mean, I hate talking about Grizzlick as much as I have because I really think he's a wonderful hockey player. But I feel like what's happened to him in a slightly weirder, different way than Torrey Krug is salary escalate. You progress in your career, you make more money, you get better, you get played in situations that are bad for you because you wind up against giants who can skate and you can't get out of their way in the playoffs and they hit to hurt. And that's what happens to guys like him. And so, if I could keep him as a third pairing guy to supplement my puck moving game, then that might be there. But right now he makes too much money for that. And that's why he's wearing this bullseye as his contract is winding down. So yeah, I mean, and it does look like that, Mark. Every little straw, you wonder, is this the one that breaks the camel's back? When are the Bruins finally going to do something here? And it winds up making the guy look like he's a problem, and he's not. He's just not going to be part of their future going forward, unless there's catastrophic injury to Lindholm or something. And it just doesn't make any sense that it's a succession plan, and he's at the end of his with this hockey team as we've known it. And I'll be pretty surprised if there's more Grizzlick after this season. So, yeah, part of me is urgent. Part of me is anxious to see this situation play itself out.
And I think the issue becomes with Grizzlick in particular, with all that you're talking about, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying, is that I think he's a very popular guy in that dressing room. I think he's very well liked. I think all of his teammates like him. I think he's well respected. And I think that's the part that I think makes it difficult. If there's kind of an expiration date there, or if there's an expectation that at some point he's not going to be with the team anymore. I think that's a tough one. That's going to be a
kind of off topic, but I do wonder sometimes if this has haunted the Bruins, that they have put too much value on the harmony of the room and not gotten the hockey widgets that they need when it matters most, and say, well, we all love each other. Well, okay, for one round you did.
But that's an imperfect science, right? That is like the magical formula that everybody's going after, is chemistry versus like what you need on the ice and how that whole thing works. But I do know you're right. There's a big time value on getting the right people, getting good people in that room, perhaps even at the expense of skill level at sometimes. But Mark, Mick mentioned Beecher, and I think that's an interesting one. I'd asked Jim Montgomery, this is going back a couple of weeks now, just about the fourth line, the minutes that they were playing. How did he want to play the fourth line more to take some of the pressure off the other forwards as far as workload goes and ice time and all that, especially at this time of year? And he went into a really long answer where he was talking about players on that fourth line where the more that they play, and when they hit a certain mark, like around 10 minutes, their play drops off, and they had numbers to back it up and all that stuff. And it was funny at the time. I think people assumed it was Lauko that he was referencing without saying the player's name. I think maybe it was Beecher, and that's kind of part of the reason why he's down in Providence now, why Boquist is up with the team, and now you're seeing the fourth line playing 11, 12 minutes. Granted, they've mixed up the third and fourth lines, but you're seeing each of them play a little more, and the top 6 minutes come down. And maybe that was a player they had identified as he needs to work on some things to work up his endurance to get to the point where he can play 12, 13 minutes a night. Because when you look on its face, some of the things he was doing, killing penalties, winning faceoffs at the NHL level, was good enough. But maybe there were certain things that, weren't as obvious to people when they were watching him play.
Well, I think it was Lauko and Beecher, in terms of the more they play, the less effective they are. I know, I believe that's been talked about with Lauko for, going back to last year.
Yeah.
That the more he plays, he extends his shift sometimes, and, that's when he takes a stick penalty, or that's when he takes a penalty that you don't want to see him take, like in the offensive zone. But
Yep.
as far as Beecher goes, I just think that winning faceoffs and zooming up and down the ice as he's capable of doing is all well and good, but I believe they want more. I think they want his engine to run hotter. There's times when, stuff happens and he's not doing anything. He goes, I think it was, I'd have to check this, but I think in 3 of the last 4 games that he played for Boston, he didn't have a single shot on goal.
Yeah.
Now, they're not looking to him to score, but you gotta be more than a guy.
Gotta be more impactful.
Heroes.
Yeah.
So I think, they're not looking for him to fight per se, but to play shift in and shift out as if, I really want to be here. I want to be here and nobody is going to knock me out of this position. And what happened is Boquist came up and knocked him out. Boquist didn't have a good camp, obviously,
No.
beginning of the season in Providence.
Was very nondescript, I think, for the camp and the first half of the year. Yep.
But here's a guy with, 200 NHL games under his belt, can do a lot of things in a bottom 6 role. And when he got up there again, he started doing those things, and it kind of put a spotlight on the things that Beecher wasn't doing. So he's in Providence. We'll see. He's going to have to fight through this and maybe get that engine revving a little higher and go from there.
This really reminds me of the Bruins teams of that made the Stanley Cup final in 87, 88, and 89, 90. Each of them, those 2 teams went through dramatic personnel changes between those 2 years, but in those 3 seasons. But it just seems like there's like about 25 forwards on this team that we might see when it's all said and done. And you have like 2 third lines, 2 fourth lines. And if you started to say, okay, give me your lineup for the 88 final against Edmonton or something, and you'd be leaving off 7 players no matter what names you put in. And this seems like it's going to be one of those teams. What's that?
Don't forget Mo LeMay.
Yeah, that's right. That's a perfect example. People remember Mo LeMay. But boy, how many games did Byers and Johnston play? How many games did Billy O'Dwyer play in 88? Or John Bison 90? It's just a long list of guys, and this is the most competitive I've ever seen since then. The Bruins at the bottom of their forward lineup. It's a lot of performance hurdles there. And maybe that's just the nature of the beast this year, that part of them loading up with these contracts and putting them in front of the Providence players. One of the things I asked Ryan Muginel last week was, do you think that this is good for the players, that Don Sweeney always does this? He always signs guys on short-term and money, journeymen, and places them in front of prospects like it's an essential piece of their development is to hurdle over somebody. It's kind of like you got a sophomore point guard in your high school basketball team that you coach, and you want him to be your starter and drive the team at the end of the season, but you got to put a senior in his face first. You got to give him something he's got to hurdle over. And he said, I'm not really sure that's what he's doing, but I like it. So,
Well, making young players earn it is, I not just young players, but that feels to me, that's an essential part of what the Bruins are, or what they
Yep.
have, is making guys earn it. Nobody's handed anything. You know, you got to earn your keep, and you know, I think a lot of that's kind of what's going on with Beecher. I feel like that they want him to, you know, yeah, he made it up for a while, but you know, as they say, staying in the NHL is harder than getting to the NHL. So he's gonna
no question.
he's gonna have to deliver on that front now.
No doubt. And I do think also just from a second half of the year playoff perspective, like the fourth line center spot is a really tough role, job, niche on a team, whatever you want to call it, for a rookie young guy to really excel in, because of some of the nuances of that position, as far as responsibility, as far as some of the details and things you have to do well under high pressure as the games get closer and more intense in the second half and the playoffs too. And you know, you wonder if a veteran like Boquist would end up being more well equipped for something like that kind of a job with everything on the line, rather than a guy going through all that stuff for the first time. And that'll be something interesting to watch going down the stretch. We do have Factor Meals to help us out. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit when it does get busy, when it does get crazy, when we do need a quick meal. They fuel you up fast with flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. Takes less than 2 minutes to cook them. They're fresh, never frozen, meals ready in 2 minutes, like I said. They have calorie-conscious options, going upscale with some of the things they're offering now, like surf and surf meal options, roasted garlic filet mignon, and shrimp, and Cajun spiced shrimp and salmon, which is like right in my wheelhouse. This is the kind of stuff I'm all about. So it's got everything for everybody. There's 34 plus chef prepared, dietitian approved weekly options for meals. You can get snacks, you can get breakfast items. Like it's a great deal. So if you want to get Factor Meals, go to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use the code Haggs50 to get 50% off of your first box. It's a great deal. You know, I've tried it. It's fantastic. I recommend it to you. We love these ready to make meal kits, especially when we're on the go with our kids. So one more time, that's factormeals.com/Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. You won't be sorry if you go to Factor Meals. It gets the Haggs thumbs up seal of approval. Mark, while we have you here, you know more about the Providence Bruins than anybody. You are with that team all the time and watch them. Just anything of note lately, you know, some of the usual suspects, what you've seen out of them, and you know, where those the prospects are in their development track this year.
Well, Fabian Lysel's play recently is definitely worth noting. You know, I've questioned him in the past. That's no secret.
Yeah.
But I think that he's starting to turn the corner, at least in my eyes, and I think the coaching staff feels the same way. He's been good ever since that, you know, when Ryan Mougenel's kind of questioned his development and where he was at and his buy-in.
Yep.
Ever since then, he's been pretty good. There's been games when he's been really good. There's no more individual play at the expense of you know, playing within the team concept. He's not doing the 1-on-4 zone entries anymore. And I think his effort is better. He's working harder in practice. He was not a real hardworking practice guy, you know, previous to the last couple of months. But his effort level, I talked to an NHL scout the other day at the game who said, I notice a better effort from Lysel right now than he had earlier in the season. So that's good. That's pointing in the right direction. So, you know, maybe this is a good time to trade him. they don't have assets, let's face it. They don't have a lot of chips to put on the table. So, this might be his increased, or his, improved play recently. It might be a time to put him out there and see, could he be a guy that gets you something in return that's going to make your team better, not just this year, but down the road too.
Yep.
So I think that's something to note. I think Merkloff is, since coming back down from Boston, he's scoring again. He's playing hard. Anthony Richard has been really good. He's not a guy that gets a lot of love when, and he's not a prospect. Let's face it. He's a depth guy, but
Yep.
He's as fast as they come in the American League. You could call him up for a couple of games and get a lot of speed on the fourth line out of him. Mason Lowry had 3 assists the other day. Had a game-winning goal on a nice play in overtime the day after he got sent down. I wouldn't say he's been dominating, but he's been good. He's been good. His game is getting
He's
better.
actually a great conversation, Lowry, because Bob Beers was really concerned on 98.5's Hockey Show on repeated situations. He would reiterate this, that he thinks that Lowry would have been much better off just playing the whole season in the American League. Now, when they had injuries, they had to recall him, but the one thing he didn't want to see is see the guy yo-yoed. Now, Lowry seems mentally to have handled that part of the up and down really well. Do you agree with that, Mark?
Yeah, yes, he has. He definitely has. He shows up every day with a smile and ready to go to work.
So I guess
my
concern is, does he potentially going to be hurt by the discontinuity of his rookie pro season, his full rookie pro season, of not being able to grow his game in one place and work on the things that, now granted, there's a lot of communication there. I'm sure Don Sweeney and Evan Gold are talking all the time about this kid, and with Mougenel. But you're here, it's a different pace of play in the NHL. It's a different kind of situation. It's a different role. You go down there, and so is it going to make I'm a little worried that he's going to become Colin Miller instead of, I'm trying to think of a higher end example of what he could become in the NHL, because a player who has all the parts, all the skills, but they never really come together into a really good defenseman. That's what I worry about with him if things stay choppy, even though he's got such a great outlook, the kid.
Well, I think he's going to be fine. I think, when you look at a guy right out of college in the NHL in the first half of his first pro season, he's got nothing to complain about, And when he got called up, it wasn't because he was knocking the ball out of the park in Providence. It was because somebody got hurt.
Right.
So in terms of earning it, I think earning it and refining your game. So make your mistakes in the American League, not in the National League, where it can cost you points in the standings, and also can bring the wrath of the fan base down on him. Although I think there's overwhelming support from him among the fans, it seems to me. But to me, better to make your mistakes in the American League and refine your game, and then go up and not come back down. That's the goal here, is to get him up there and never see him again in Providence.
Boychuk,
if he keeps, he's on a good path right now. And hopefully that continues. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. I think he's the kind of kid that can not be too bothered by the up and down to this point. But,
yeah, and I think I'd be more concerned about Mick's what Mick is voicing there if he was, when he was up at the NHL level, sitting for like 2 weeks and not playing, or that kind of thing was going on where he wasn't actually playing and developing. If he's up here,
Not
And
to
he's
compare Jakob Zaboral to Mason Lowrey, but
right.
geez, Zeke sat for, I don't know,
Yes.
weeks, months
Yes.
even, I don't know. And,
Mhm.
you know, not the same player, not the same, you know, mentally not the same player, but
Yep.
that's an example of what can, a worst case example of what can happen when a guy sits and sits and sits.
Yeah, he made a mistake in a game in Florida last year, right before Thanksgiving, and he didn't play again for about 3.5 months, I think, after that.
Yeah.
He was in the doghouse for quite some time, and that really doesn't do any player any good when you're in a situation like that. But for a young player, I think that's the worst case, and that's when it really starts to hamper their development. Twitter of the question of the week. This is more like a sort of Twitter statement of the week from JPA85 or JP8 Spoked B. Hockey East tournament is going to be good this year. If it's anything like what we saw last weekend between BC and BU, it's going to be phenomenal. I think they're playing each other in the opening round of the Beanpot, which is unfortunate. You'd love to have seen that matchup in the finals, but Finn skated during the second intermission with his Newton boys, Chestnut Hill on Friday night, so I was there with them to watch that game. 10,000 fans. Like there was a couple of parents that couldn't go, and I think the tickets were going for a couple $100. Like being scalped or a secondary market. Like for both of you guys, just how awesome was it to see first of all, BUBC back to where it's been at its, best place. Both teams are where they should be in college hockey. That's right. Mick's got his Beanpot hat. And just to see that atmosphere, especially on Friday night at Boston College, it was electric. And like for Finn and his sports players and a lot of the young players that were there in that crowd, they I think all want to play college hockey now after seeing that. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, I went to Saturday night's game at BU, and it was just a fantastic hockey game, a fantastic show, everything you want to see or hope to see in a college hockey game on a Saturday night. It was just outstanding. And I've seen both teams numerous times this year, knowing that some of these guys aren't going to be back. They're going to be
Yep.
moving on after this year. So see them while you can. But just I came away from Saturday night thinking, wow, is BC going to be tough to beat? They are, BU's tremendous, but BC with that line of first round draft picks, all of them like 18 years old. It's unbelievable how good they are.
Yep.
If you give them a chance, the puck's in the net. It's when they break in on a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2, it's magic's going to happen. BU obviously has Celebrini, an elite player, and Lane Hudson as well. But man, BC is so impressive.
Both of those guys,
too. Like Cutter Gauthier. Cutter Gauthier is a pretty dominant player,
Yes.
college hockey wise,
Yep.
too. When you're watching him play, he looks like a guy when you're watching him play now that should be in the pros instead of playing in Hockey East this year for sure.
Joe, you might not have gotten your final because BU went to Northeastern and lost last night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did, and there's the grumbling in the BU fan base over the too many men call in overtime, just just a terrible call. I mean, hey, I bang on the referees enough, so I'm not going to go all out here. I'm not going to go all out here, but boy, that was a terrible call.
I'm all about closing the show by bashing the refs. Mark, thank you very much for throwing that out there.
Hey, quick note:
yeah.
Andre Gasso and Oscar Jelvik, Bruins prospects who played for BC in these games. Yep. Gasso needs to work a lot on his sledding. I mean skating, but he's got a lot of Morgan Geeky in his game, and it would be fun to see if his skating can come along to a point, he'd be one heck of a 7th round pick. Jelvik is much more polished player and obviously drafted earlier, and he does run their second unit power play. But that was fun watching to see what the Bruins have there, even though they're not the guys who get in the fanfare that some of the other ones are.
No, most definitely. And Jelvik was a guy. Jelvik was a guy that I noticed big time at development camp last summer when he was here at Bruins development
Oh,
camp.
and one final note on BC.
Yes,
I'm
Mick.
having my future nightmares already of Fowler in the Montreal net.
There you go. Oh, that's a good point. He was excellent in both of those games. All right. Thank you very much, Mick and Mark. Let's thank our sponsors real quick. Fanduel Sportsbook. It is Super Bowl time right now, so if you're like me, you're going to be watching the Super Bowl. You're going to be paying attention to all the hype, to Radio Row, to the Taylor Swift cam that I'm sure is going to be going on during the game. Right now, FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. So what you can do right now is new customers joining today, FanDuel Sportsbook, you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So just visit fanduel.com/Boston and sign up with the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Network, FanDuel Sportsbook. And then let's also thank Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Ready in 2 minutes, chef approved, calorie-conscious meals. They're delicious. All you got to do is go to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and you get 50% off of your first box. Mick, Mark, thank you very much for joining me. It is always much appreciated. You can go on with your days now. The hockey talk is over. And thank you everybody much. Right, never ends. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. We'll see you at the rink.